I'm the one it wants. Let it come and get me. Here's your look at the new NECA Toys Batman vs. Predator Deluxe box set. Batman vs. Predator is a comic book crossover featuring a duel between Batman and a member of the titular extraterrestrial race from the Predator film franchise. It was written by Dave Gibbons, with art from Andy and Adam Kubert, and it was published by DC Comics and Dark Horse Comics in 1991. As we always do on this channel, the first thing we're going to do is measure off the figures so that I can tell you, the members of the mob, how tall these figures stand. To the very top of Armored Batman, you're looking at a figure rather impressively standing at 7.5 inches in height, which that works out in centimeters to be 19.1, just a little over 19 centimeters. I'm going to switch that back to inches once again, and we're going to measure off this Yaucha. That would be the Predator after all. And to the very top of the Predator's head, you're looking at a figure that's standing a little over 7.5 inches, 7.6. He is taller than Batman. And that in centimeters works out to be 19.5, a little over Batman's height, 19.5 centimeters tall. Now, in the accessory department, Predator quite overwhelms Batman with his 6 accessories to Batman's 3. So why don't we first have a look at Predator, and then we'll kind of move our attention and focus over to Armored Batman. The first thing that the Predator comes, actually, you know what, we won't look at that one yet. We'll look at the one that we normally look at when we look at really most all the Predators, because it does involve a little bit of assembly when you get this out of the packaging. Included with the Batman versus Predator, you do get the ever-reliable plasma caster shoulder cannon. I did notice getting it out of the packaging, though, the tubing that normally would run from here and connect into the hole here was detached. Luckily, it wasn't a case where it was broken from the shoulder. That's always a harder fix. I guess I could probably just take a little bit of glue and mend that back into place. It's certainly not forgotten. I certainly will not forget to glue that in place, but a simple enough fix. I just want to mention that to you guys now. It does seem like it's the same plasma caster, don't quote me on this, as the Predator 2 City Hunter Predator that we got from NECA Toys. One thing I must say I do like about this is the color palette. Color palette actually for the Predator is really impressive. Talk about that in a second, but I really like the color choice that they went with here. It's hard to actually even pinpoint what I would call this. Part of me wants to say it's gunmetal, but there's something else in that mix. It's almost got a little bit of like a bluish tint, almost a little bit of a greenish tint. It almost has like an iridescent color scheme to it, because when you look at it at certain angles, it kind of looks like it's green. Turning it again, it kind of looks like it's slightly purplish tinted silver. It's really neat. I've never really seen this color be used on a figure before. Connects the exact same way as most plasma casters will connect. There's a little tab point here, a tab point at the top, and you're just going to go ahead and grab your Predator figure. Just move the head out of the way here, and you'll see that there's a slot down below, and then there's a slot right there, right at the top there. I always find it's easier, first of all, to move the skulls out of the way. You don't want those in the way of things. But we're going to attach the bottom first, just plug it up. You see what I did there? I just kind of pushed it up. And then while it's along the top here, just want to move the head, I want to kind of pull it, stretch the plasma caster cannon until the shoulder pad area has then tabbed into, this is kind of a little bit trickier, but tabs into the slot, the hole in the top there. Most of the times it's successful. The odd time or so it may not stay in place. I probably don't have it in completely, but that's what it looks like with the cannon in place. I do notice, though, that the actual cannon portion of the shoulder is loose. I probably could take maybe a little bit of floor polish, or I could probably even untab that, add a little bit of nail polish. Look at you, like 101 Crafts 101. You could add like maybe a little bit of nail polish just to thicken up that joint and then attach it back into place. Might make it a little less loose. As it stands, as it goes right now, it's a shame that it is loose, But at least nothing, knock on wood, is broken on it as of yet, except for, like I said, that little hose, which we will easily remedy later. Oh, I really want to talk about this predator, but I won't talk about it just yet because there's other things to discuss. How about, for example, his combi stick, which I guess is a variation to what he normally has as his weapon of choice, one of his many weapons of choice. It's a retractable spear. Now, it doesn't retract very far, mind you. It only extends out to that point. It's rather interesting, though, as it goes for combi sticks, because normally what they are is almost like a bamboo spear, and then the metal is on the top. This looks like it's comprised all of metal. It looks very much similar to something like a Klingon would be wielding in his arsenal. Like that they've added some silver to it, but it's not a completely finished silver. Leaving off those little points there kind of does give it like a little bit more of a scratched up, used look to it. Certainly the Predator probably has been using the combi stick in the past. It is a little trickier to get into his hand. This may involve prying the fingers away from the palm to kind of wedge the combi stick into it. I find it actually a little easier, if in fact, to take the point that extends out and just kind of pry the fingers away from the palm. You could also use a little bit of hot water. Oh, look at you talking Craft 101 is actually Action Figure 101, and you can fit that in place like so. Prying the fingers a little bit further away from them, even still, you could probably fit it around the larger cylinder of the handle. Liking the look of that, I must say. Other go-tos that we usually go to is this Predator also possesses a Yuacha, I want to get the pronunciation down correctly, smart disc. And it kind of has the same sort of paint palette as the combi stick, rather a little bit of a departure than the coloring that we're going to be looking at on it in a second. But this is basically just a straight out silver. It's not completely silver, mind you, kind of like the spear. You can see like there's little areas in which the silver has kind of been left off, just to kind of give it the look of age. Normally, it would be the opportunity for me to say that it would fit into the side of his holster here, but again, it's hit or miss sometimes getting it in place. As quickly as I feel like I get it in the holder section here, it stays, and then it may fall out. So just kind of soak it in while you have the opportunity to, and yeah, hopefully it's probably going to fall out, so I'm just going to take it out and just call it a day. One thing also lastly to mention about at least the weapons is with the actual combi stick, it doesn't seem like, obviously there's a little tab connector point on the back that would be for a clip for other Predator figures. It's not really successful for holding the spear in this case, so he doesn't actually have anything that will hold the spear, other than just having him holding it in his hand. Speaking of hands, while we're also at it, this particular Predator also has pretty much familiar looking hands suited for holding, for example. Well, this one does hold like the combi stick, just a little bit easier. Still, because it's more of a relaxed hand, as you can see right there, it's not like a full gripping hand. It holds it, but it doesn't hold it maybe as well as that one, even though that one will involve a little bit of warming up the hand. Instead, this is kind of just it almost looks like it's a cup hand for dispensing change, holding out change that maybe you can give the Cape Crusader, tip him for the safe drive into the city so he can slaughter mass hundreds. And then you also have the more dynamic hand, the fanned out hand that I always really enjoyed displaying my Predator figures with. Pretty much standard go-tos, with a lot of the things being the only exception really being the combi stick, which, like I said, it looks a little bit different. So putting that to the side, the Predator also has an interchangeable alternate portrait, which I can't help but look and feel like we've gotten this one before, perhaps not in this color change option, but it definitely does look like it's one that we have gotten before, even like right down to the Jungle Hunter. I'm sure this head sculpt has been used with the Jungle Hunter and various different Predators over the years. But again, it's the change of color that makes things unique to it. It's got the coloring that I'm trying to describe it, and I know what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, but I'm trying to actually get my words to vocalize them out. I feel like it's almost like a mucusy, scabby color. That's not the great way to describe it. It's very much like something you would see like if you didn't clean a fish tank and the algae started to form on it, that kind of discoloration. It looks like a very sick color. And I don't mean sick like rad and cool. I mean sick like it's the discoloration of a wound, as best as I could describe it. These kind of off-putting, sickly yellows and greens kind of all come together well, but it does ultimately make like the predator, especially like when you look at his body, very much an off-putting color that you wouldn't normally expect to see with predators. Predators are normally like cream colors and beiges, stuff like that, but when you start incorporating these slimier, darker tones of green, it does really make the predator look sick. And again, I don't mean rad and cool. The tendrils, the dreadlocks located on the back, have a different ringlet of color. It's kind of like a bluish, very light blue actually, almost even like a sky blue. Something, again, you don't normally see. This guy has a lot of things you don't normally see. And that's one thing I really like about when it comes to the predators and aliens. NECA toys, of course, can reuse a mold over and over and over again, but it's the color changes that is something that really separates one figure to the other. So there's the alternate head portrait. We might actually, even in final looks, swap these bad boys out. And I'll show you guys what it looks like at that point. So having a look at Predator, because I really want to look at, I know with the Superman and the Alien set, we looked at the Man of Steel first. This time around, I decided to look at the figure that we normally would see a lot of, this particular mold. Batman very much unique to himself because he's got that armor plating on. Really neat design on this guy. Looking forward to having a look at him as well. But the coloring, very much for Predator, like I said, it's kind of got like a sickly color. Even like his armor looks like it's got algae all over it. I mean, it's obviously not the case. And it does have these weird kind of colors that normally shouldn't work together, and yet somehow do. On the one end, you've got like the shoulder, for example, which is a softer plastic, and the plating underneath that, even the master, like I said, is kind of that weird kind of iridescent purplish blue gunmetal. Look at me throwing all these colors at the wall to see what sticks. But then you got like the armor plating that's actually on his body, things like his gauntlet, for example, and it's got this kind of strangely unrecognizable sick color to it. Like, again, it looks like it's covered in slime, almost like swamp colors. Even like his body's got like a visually slimy look to it. Dark colors, normally not found on the Predators. Normally, yes, we get the browns. Normally, yes, we get the greens and stuff like that. But adding all these colors together kind of really, again, gives them really dark tones and dark, sick tones that we don't normally see. Even like on the plating here, you've got these spots and just little slimy patches, which, again, normally would not be there. Really a neat-looking design. His helmet, obviously, it's not removable because it would not be removable. You got the extra head portrait right there. The helmet has that same sort of discoloration. And peeking through the discoloration, you have these bright yellowish white eyes. There's white right in the center, and yet yellow on the outer rim of it. It does really make those eyes glow. You can imagine even in the dark. That would be cool. I don't believe these are glow in the dark, but that would be cool if these could somehow glow in the dark, though. Really, really a neat-looking Predator. Have we gotten this Predator mold before? Of course we have. But again, it's just the change of palettes. It's just the change of colors that really makes this guy stand out. On the one side, on the one hand, he does have the retractable, extendable blades, I should say, on the one side on his gauntlet. And on the other side, he has the tried and true go-to. He's got a little control console, which it does seem like there's some scratching on it. I thought there was actually, those were symbols, but it actually looks like it comes across more scratching than anything else than actual symbols. There's the interior right there. Just a weird coloring, really interesting on this guy. For his posability, I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect. His head rotates back and forth. It hinges up and down. Yes, normally that would cause the plasma caster to pop itself off. I have many actually Predators in my collection where I've just resorted to actually gluing that in place just so the plasma caster wouldn't fall off. Things you have to be careful of course, when you are moving the arm, specifically this arm, is this tube right here. I've seen many cases where people have mentioned that their tubes have broke because if you move the arm too far forward, that gets tight and immediately wants to rip from one of their points, one of the connector points. So you just want to be careful of that. The arm swivels at the bicep area. Might even be safer to swivel it on this side. It has a double hinge on the elbow, and it has a swivel on the hand also as well. I get that this is supposed to be there. I can't think of what NECA could do to kind of work around this, because it's always 9 times out of 10. I probably have about half my collection of figures, of Predator figures, that even in reviews itself, when I wasn't careful and I moved that arm too much forward, it did result in this breaking. I'm not really sure what they could do to fix and work around that. But again, that is one of the more sensitive aspects of the Predator figures. It does have the upper torso ball joint, a very familiar bit of articulation, and further more familiar pieces of articulation is the lower ball joint as well. Legs split out, go forward, go back, swivel on the top cut of the thigh, double hinge on the knee. Does not possess a swivel where the calf area is, however it does swivel on the feet, up and down, and it also has an ankle rocker back and forth. How would I summarize a rather lengthy description of this particular Yuacha? I would probably say that this one does have, like I said, these really weird kind of unhealthy colors utilized for its body. The end result, though, is a really dark toned Predator that has interesting aspects to it. I've never really seen like a combination of colors like this put together in a figure. The end result is something that's slightly jarring, but slightly a little refreshing, if that makes any sense at all. Now let's have a look at the Cape Crusader. He is kind of, again, like I don't want to say the all-star, but he is certainly the exclusive to this set. And actually, you know, while we're certainly at it, a little bit of size comparisons, because we just finished having a look at the Man of Steel. We'll put Superman right there. We'll put Batman right next to him. Oh, this would have made a perfect movie, Batman v Superman. Great movie, by the way. I don't care what people say. Having the two figures side by side, it's, again, really neat to look at these and think to yourself, like an idea moment, that just aha moment. NECA Toys produced these. NECA Toys produced DC figures. Superman's even fallen over because he can't believe that NECA would actually have produced figures based on his likeness. So, like, looking at two figures side by side, again, just really, really neat that we have these figures. Now, I'm, like, looking at them, and the reasoning also why I want to bring these figures into play is, obviously, Batman has plating over top of his suit. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second as well. But it does seem like underneath all of that is the same workings of a mold. Even, like, look at the legs, the knees, for example, they seem to match one another. These little bumps up at the top there. The arms, the biceps, seem to share similar molds as well. So I think despite for the fact that the colors are different, despite for the fact that Batman has all this extra armor plating over top of his suit, they do seem like they are mold brothers, sharing the exact same body mold. Perfectly fine with that. Fly away, Superman, fly away. We've already had a look at you. So having a look at Batman's accessories, he does come with his small gun, as he did in the comic. Nice dry brushing of black paint just to kind of give it a little bit of age to it. A lot of his armor's actually got that as well. It does fit into his hand, but it does involve you swapping out the hands from a closed fist for his defaulted look to the gripping hand that comes included as an extra add-on. Might I also say a little bit difficult to kind of get your hand in there because he does have this part of his forearm that sticks further out past his hand. I did actually have to kind of get from the sides and kind of wiggle it back and forth to relieve this fist of his duties and to bring in the trigger hand, which we can go ahead and take the pistol, a little small gun there, and it fits into Batman's hand. Now, I quite remember this comic run, but I'm drawing a blank actually for what this pistol actually does. I'm sure somebody can tell me down below. But a neat looking little small designed weapon that he can fit into his hand. The other go-to default is that Batman also comes with a big giant swinging bat. You'll also notice there's some Yuacha blood on the side of the bats. Batman goes swinging. Ironically enough, it's funny when you think about it that the Cape Crusader is swinging a bat. I'll let that sink in. The bat does fit into its hand, although I feel like the hand, the way that the pointer finger sticks out, leads more to the idea of him using this hand for the gun. The bat does fit into his hand, but it does involve just a little bit of prying away, starting from the most narrow point of the bat, and just kind of wiggle it into his hand like so. There we go. Like I said, it does stay in his hand. A couple of things have just dropped. You probably have heard it, but it does sit a little loose. I mean, I guess you could have it to its furthest point, and Batman can have the bat kind of out like that. That kind of looks cool. That's a good way to display it. So those are his accessories. I'll go ahead and just retrieve the 2 plates of armor from his leg, and we'll resume the rest of this review. Going ahead and retrieving the plates that go onto his thighs. What's neat about this particular Batman figure, not only is the fact that he looks kind of like RoboCop, that might be one of the reasons why I like this armor so much, but he does actually have removable plates. The easiest and the ones that fall off the most are the ones that are attached to his thighs. They're very familiar kind of plates that you would normally expect to find like with the old vintage figures where anything could armor up. Usually just involved a molding that was a little bit bigger than the figure's leg or arm or torso, whatever it was, and then those would just snap into place. These are a little on the loose side and do frequently fall off. I guess if you're not moving the figure around like I am in this review, you probably won't have a lot of problems with simply just displaying it on the shelf. These aren't going to probably likely go anywhere. The other thing that is removable on Batman is, of all things, his torso, which is really neat. This also falls off frequently. His visor, we'll go ahead and take that off for the time being, and there goes another one of the thighs. We're going to go ahead and I'll show you what it looks like. You can detach this. This also kind of reminded me of the old vintage He-Man figures, which would have armor pieces. And this just kind of slides off like this. And let me just put the figure down for a second. It's essentially just the old system of having pegs on one side, holes on the other side, and then you just kind of line those up. It's a lot easier, of course, to pull off this feat when you actually have a torso in the middle, but that's what the armor looks like on both sides. And then we look at the unarmored Batman, and then once again we bring in his mold brother. Yes, in fact, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. You can see that they are the exact same mold to one another. Perfectly fine with that. Believe you me, I'm perfectly fine with that if it means that NECA Toys are doing DC figures. Now we are supposed to be getting ourselves another Batman in the pipeline. And that one's going to have a really neat looking xenomorph. Likely, I would imagine this is going to be the same body mold that they're going to be using for all those figures. A rather nice muscular body, liking that they came up with this design. Likely, it's also going to be very exclusive to superheroes, but I mean, again, if you could make use of this mold for superhero figures, I really like the musculature that they've got sculpted in these. Nicely done. Okay, so let's have a look at Batman's face. Might as well do a look at his face before we start putting the armor back on. That is a neat looking head portrait. Underneath that you can see a scowling Batman with the teeth visible here. Am I the only one that gets the vibe of RoboCop? It might be also the fact that once you add the visor, probably adds a little bit also to that. Coloring is quite nice on this. Specifically also liking the dark sections in the corner of the teeth. It's that little bit that adds so much extra depth to those teeth. Really, really liking this one a lot. The coloring is for his armor. That is kind of also reminds me of, was it Night Owl, I believe, from the Watchmen series. Probably, again, a little bit of nods there. They probably... Creators like this will probably get ideas from one another. One nice idea is he does have the translucent dome, which actually, when you do put it over top of his face, obviously it conceals his eyes. It doesn't snap into place, it's actually more just friction forced in place. Not only does it look a little bit like RoboCop, especially if you like do this, it looks like RoboCop. Kind of also looks a little bit like a xenomorph, which would also be one of the long-standing enemies of the Predators. So again, I kind of like those little nods like this. The helmet is really, really neat though. Obviously, we would get a version of this in the Batman v Superman, talking a little again about Batman and Superman. An armored up Ben Affleck. Boy, that's such a great movie. Such a shame that that movie didn't branch off to what it should have been. Anyways, the translucency, the smoky nature of the plastic, you can still see Batman's eyes, though they're a little harder to make out. Even like from the standpoint of the helmet, it looks like he would have forged this out, almost hammered these out himself, these pieces. Some rivet points there on the side as well. Some nice additional gold, so it's not just all blue. There's other colors kind of helping and assisting to kind of bring this all together. One thing that's neat is, once again, they are using fabric capes as opposed to plastic capes. What a breath of fresh air it is to see a fabric cape on a figure. I talked a lot about that when we had a look at the Superman figure, but still holds true. Man, oh man, there's something to be said. So refreshing, the fact that you get a nice fabric cape. That's a decent quality cape too as well. To think that we would actually get figures that have these plastic fruit roll-up capes. We've had a look at those, a fair share of those in some older reviews, but look at the quality of fabric that they use. It kind of has like an elasticity to it. You can see, kind of feels a little bit like, I don't know if I would say, obviously it doesn't feel like a velour, but it's kind of got a really soft feel to it, but it's also got, like I said, some stretch to it as well. There's the back of Batman. Really interesting looking utility belt. I like that it's got a broad utility belt on the front. You can imagine this would be rather difficult for him to sit down, drive a vehicle with such large amount of armor plating and large utility belt there. Like that it's got a couple of different tones of gray and different gold browns and stuff in there. It's just like a mixture of really nice, neat metal colors all kind of coming together. It's not just simply gold. On the side, he's got his gauntlet. Nice blades sticking out from the gauntlet. I really did think that these were removable. I looked at this one right here, and the way it attaches, I thought I could pry this away to kind of get access to the hand. From what I can see, it doesn't look like it can be halved. If it can be halved, it's just attached by glue, and I really wouldn't run the risk of wanting to bend or pry that open just to get access to the hand. But there's the side. It's nice dry brushing that's been done on the gauntlet itself. Oh, loving these colors. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get the plating back onto Batman. Almost kind of Nightfall, Azrael Batman kind of design of Bat logo. This would have, of course, predated that. We'll snap the one piece on like so. We'll flip the figure around. May involve flipping the cape over, and then we'll get the back piece. Even kind of like the back piece looks a lot like RoboCop. I got a RoboCop vibe when I'm looking at this. So we're going to take the top pieces and we're going to snap them into place. This hole, by the way, is what's going to be pointing down when it comes time to put this back onto Batman. And you're just going to line up the tabs. There's always kind of that one tab that wants to be difficult. The other side, we're all good to go. Snap that into place. Like I said, the only thing I have to go back and retrieve is the one leg piece. No surprise there, the one leg. It's just, these sit really loose. But boy, oh boy, that additional metallic silver only finishes off a figure that I already liked right off the bat. The blues, the grays, and then like this silver on the coloring and the plating here really does bring all this figure together, and I'm loving the design of this Batman. Okay, so let's have a look at his accessories. You know what? I'm going to do myself a favor already, and I'm going to take this leg plate off because I know it's going to come off while I'm moving the figure. For his articulation, Batman's head rotates all the way around. I'm surprised actually the visor stayed on while I did that, and it also rocks back and forth. I'm very carefully holding the plate in place so it just doesn't fall off. Now it's not going to stay in place. There we go. There we go. The upper torso has, so basically it's all the same articulation as the Superman. He has the upper torso crunch. And this one doesn't have so much the waist swivel, and I think a lot of that, the contributor of that is the fact he's got so much happening right here. The arms hinge out. These shoulder pads are hinging. There's a little bit of hinged plastic on there so that there's give when you move the arm out. You can move the arm forward, you can move the arm back. He has a swivel on the bicep. a double hinge on the elbow. And even though they are a little harder to get at, you can also swivel the fist underneath the guard plate here. Legs hinge outward, forward and back. Is a swivel on the top cut of the thigh, basically where it attaches to the peg. It swivels right there. It has a double hinge on the knee, a little stiff on the joints, but I'm fine with that. Oh, and then through the process of that, this leg has popped out a couple of times. Just snap that into place. There we go. He has a swivel on the lower kind of calf guard, shin guard, if you will. The feet also move back and forth, rock back and forth with an ankle pivot. And he also has, much like Superman, toe articulation. There's a good gander at the undersoles of Batman's boots. A nice heavy tread happening those. And then he's also got pegals on the undersides of his feet. So if you want to get a little creative with displaying the figure in dynamic poses, then most definitely you can utilize one of NECA's many various different display stand options. Overall, a really, again, neat looking set. This is an SDCC exclusive, and again, I want to send out a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys for making this and many other reviews, some of which are going to be coming up in future videos, all possible. The hardest thing for me is actually really to kind of come up with which set I like more. I'm a big fan of Superman, and getting classic duds on the Man of Steel is all win for me. But something to be said about armored up Batman that makes me just get excited. The discoloration and the weird colorings that they went with for the Predator here are different in a good way. Overall, it's again a really neat looking set. Let me know down below which set you prefer, the Superman and Xenomorph or the Batman and the Predator. Because I never swapped out the head portrait for the Predator in the review, I figured I'd rectify things in final looks by changing out and giving him a different look. The only reason why I didn't do it during the review is simply because we have gotten this head sculpt many times before, and I thought you guys probably had already seen it, but I figured just to mix things up, just to give him a different look, I would change it up and have him unhelmeted here for his final showdown with the Caped Crusader. I'm honestly torn as to which set I like more. On the one end, on the other set, the Xenomorph or the Alien, as they tout it in the packaging, the Alien and the Superman, you get yourself classic costume Superman, and that alone says something. But on the other hand, if I can have an arguing point to that, the fact that we have armored up Batman, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it usually says to you, the readers, Batman can't hold it on his own with the current uniform, the current costume that he's wearing, so he has to armor it up. And you know something's going to go down when Batman has to armor up. This particular figure has some neat elements to it, one of which being removable plates. The armor is good for the most part. I wish there was a way to attach the legs a little bit better. I mean, they're really only kind of friction clamped onto his thighs and resulting in frequently having those thigh plates coming off. But providing you're not playing with the figure too much. In the review, of course, I was moving the figure around a lot, so the leg plates were coming off a lot. If you simply are just displaying the figures, as you see even here in final looks on a turntable, the leg guards, those leg plates aren't going anywhere. Batman's got a really neat looking design. Obviously, he is kind of the draw, I think, in this particular set, being that we have gotten ourselves a Predator before. But you know what? That Predator is no slouch either, my friend. Even though we have gotten a similar mold in the past, there's something sick, and there I go using that term again, there's something sick about using that color palette that they went with. It's kind of slimy, it's sickly looking. I'll stop saying sick, but you know what I mean. It's definitely a very unhealthy color scheme that they've given this Predator, and I'm really digging it in all honesty. Now this one here, like the Superman and the Alien set, is an SDCC 2019 exclusive. In other words, if you were lucky enough to actually get this set at the actual convention, then you paid for the price that NECA was selling them for. Unfortunately now, if you are lucky enough to maybe get them online before the prices start going up, scalpers eventually are going to start charging a fortune for these guys. So if you can get them at a good price, and again, good price, highly would recommend getting these and adding them to your collection, especially if you're a Batman fan, which I am, and you're a Predator fan, which I am. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys for making this review possible. They sent over a whole bunch of SDCC 2019 exclusives, so we're going to have a look at those in upcoming videos. So if you really want to kind of get a close-up look at what these things look like, stay tuned to this channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and make sure you turn on the bell notifications, because there's going to be a whole ton of NECA reviews coming onto this channel. Let me know what you guys think of this set, if you managed to pick it up for yourself, or based on this review and this review alone. Let me know what you think of the Predator versus Batman, or the better Batman versus Predator set. Let me know in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.